Okay, so this morning we're just going to run through a brief overview, which I will deliver. We'll then run through communication and extension activities and plans. I'll then hand over to Maria, who will cover up on the monitoring, evaluation and reporting. Then Russell will cover up on milestone and final reporting, and then we'll just do a brief wrap up. So we should be able to get through everything within the 2-hour window. As I said, we'll hold the questions to those specific sections, and then at the end, if there are any other questions, we can definitely address those. Just a brief overview. Sorry. So the PDS team consists of myself. So I'm employed by MLA as the MLA project manager for the PDS program. We then have 2 contracted coordinators who support both the groups and applicants, along with myself, with refining applications, managing relationships with our facilitators and managing our existing portfolio and reporting requirements. So our details are there, myself, Russell, who will also present this morning, and Maria. So we are here to help. So always feel free to please reach out to us whenever you need to. So currently at MLA, we think about producer adoption as being a journey or a pathway to achieving adoption and on-farm practice change, made up of stepping stones of our awareness activities, our short-term training packages, and our long-term practice change activities. So PDS fits within the long-term practice change area, along with our profitable grazing systems. In our short-term training programs, we've got our e-learning resource, our MLA Edge network, 1 to 2 day courses, and Bred Well, Fed Well. And then in our awareness activities is where our beef up and meet up forums, along with our PGS feeder activities and our webinar program sits. Along all of this process sits our advisor capacity building. So our livestock advisor updates and our livestock advisor essentials, along with our future livestock consultants program. A bit of overview on the program. So the PDS program, as we know, seeks producer group-led regionally focused projects aiming to achieve demonstratable permanent practice change on farm. We have a robust monitoring and evaluation framework to demonstrate the value and impact to the producers involved, provides an opportunity to increase producers' knowledge, skills and confidence through key activities such as field days, workshops and webinars, and has communication activities to extend project activities and outcomes to a wider community and industry. Key to the program is that the program participants are looking to implement known practices and commercially available technologies. So we have completed 4 open calls under the current PDS strategy, including this most recent call. So we've fully contracted over 58 new projects in the first 3 calls. We've supported 16 projects from the last call. So we have over 85 projects under management within the PDS program at the moment across our 3 funding areas of our levy, co-contributor and integrated R&D PDSs. So the stats on the screen there are taken from the producer adoption outcomes report. So if you do want to see more detail around what the program is achieving, you can absolutely do that. It's available on our website. We have a new refreshed PDS website. So please go and have a look at it. So you'll see there that there are quick link access to our PDS search tool, which each project has as a web page for that tool, where we will upload progress updates and also resources and case studies, etc., that are developed throughout your projects. The key for yourselves as facilitators is this facilitator resources page. So on there, you'll be able to access milestone report templates, final report templates, all our communication templates and resources, as well as the monitoring and evaluation templates and survey templates. So the key with that is it will always house the most recent versions of those documents. So that's your go-to place to access that information. So the PDS search tool, quite new. It was only introduced in the middle of last year. So it allows users to search all active and completed producer demonstration sites projects. Users are able to search for projects by topic or state or region of relevance, making finding each PDS more accessible and allowing producers to incorporate the outcomes into their own production systems. So using the tool, producers can access a summary of each PDS alongside with progress updates and findings, extension materials and resources, as I mentioned. So to access that, you just go to mla.com.au/PDS-search, or from the main page, you can access it through that quick link. To stay up to date with all things PDS, we've introduced the quarterly PDS updates. So this is a newsletter which we've also sort of rehashed in the last couple of months, and provides an update on every project that has been reported in the previous 3 months. In addition, we also include some key articles and case studies, trying to basically extend the reach of projects through that network of subscribers. So it does go to all PDS facilitators as well as to NABRAC, CELRAC and WELRAC through our consultation program. And there is a subscriber list. So definitely feel free to share that through your projects and through your membership base, so as that we can get this information out to as many producers as possible. The next round of updates will be issued in February. So the 22-23 PDS call, so this just provides a bit of an overview of what was supported. So there were 26 preliminary applications received. 22 of those were invited to submit full applications. We received 19 full applications, and 16 of those were supported. So out of the 16, we have 11 levy PDSs, 4 new co-contributor PDSs, and 1 integrated R&D PDS. So what's next for the program? So the current board approved strategy is through to June 2025. So we're entering a stage of the current strategy period where we need to be looking at what's next for the program. So over the next 12 months, one of our key focus areas is to gather feedback on the current program and framework, what works, what doesn't, what opportunities there are to further enhance the program. So we intend to do this through working with our RACs, their committees, producers and farming system groups that are involved in the program, and other key stakeholders to gather that feedback. The first stage of this will be a brief survey that will be issued in February. From there, we'll review the data and run some internal workshops around the information provided. Ideally, we'll be in a position to test run any proposed changes and enhancements to the program before the end of this strategy period, allowing time to refine anything of that strategy before we commence the next 5-year period. So just some key definitions that will be used quite a bit throughout this morning is so core producers. So these are the producers that are directly involved in the project. Some will have demonstration sites and others will just sit on that project steering committee. We always like to have around up to 10 core producers for each project, but understandable that that is not always the case depending on region. Observers are producers who will attend your field days, your workshop, field walks, and other members of your farming group. So not only producers would be involved in this group, you may have consultants, advisors, agents, resellers, etc., that would be part of that observer group. So just a bit of a refresh. So your project objectives should always be front of mind when you're developing and implementing your communication plans and your monitoring and evaluation plans. So they define what it is that you plan to achieve within the life of your project. They clearly describe your key result areas. And it is really important that your objectives should be described in a SMART term, so very specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. Okay, so do we have any questions so far? So if you do, just feel free to use the hand raising function and then I can unmute you to ask your questions. Okay, so it doesn't look like we've got any questions yet, so we'll get right into the next part. So in this section, we'll cover off on the communication and extension activities and developing the communication plans and what resources we have available to support you with that. So communication activities carried out by PDS's participants are to ensure both that relevant local community and broader industry are informed of your project, understand its value, and can access information about your project. MLA has developed a PDS communications guide to assist with developing your communication and extension materials and plan for the program. Some of the suggested communication activities are there on the screen. So a minimum level of communication activities needed to occur to contribute to the awareness level of MLA's PDS sites. This will be evidenced by the number of producers, particularly those from your local region, engaging with the project via a variety of channels. So those channels may include field days and workshops. There is opportunity for a project site sign to be developed for your host farmers, progress results in producer newsletters and social media, and reading the progress and results in MLA's communication channels. All written communication activities developed and distributed must be submitted to MLA for review. MLA will review these for branding and appropriate acknowledgement and technical content. It is expected that groups will collect and provide basic information about producer engagement to MLA as a part of the milestone reporting cycle. So this includes the number of producers attending events where the project has been showcased and any feedback from those events, and the number of producers receiving producers demonstration site group newsletters or social media post engagements. So it's really important to keep track of that engagement level to help determine the success of your communications plan as well. So when developing communication activities, it's important to ensure that you focus your content on relevant key messages. The communications guide and template provide guidance for key messages. However, additional key messages specific to your project will need to be captured also. So on the screen there are just some of the, I suppose, high level key messages relevant to PDS. So a clear description of how the project will benefit local producers is really important. That the project involves a partnership between the contracted organisation and local producers to demonstrate research findings on commercial properties, the length of time the project or when the project was initiated with the specific producer group, as well as that producer demonstration sites are funded by MLA to support producers through peer-to-peer groups to pursue new skills, knowledge and management practices applicable to their own commercial livestock and production systems. And one that's key is to ensure that the text, the producer demonstration site is funded by Meat and Livestock Australia, is included in all your communication materials. So that's just to ensure that the acknowledgement of the funding is clearly being captured when we're communicating about the projects. Okay, so MLA brand guidelines. So this is all included in the PDS communications guidelines. So when using the MLA logo on your communications, it's important to follow our brand guidelines, which cover off on things like logo placement, sign, color, version, and space around the logo. A copy of the logo will be sent out to everybody, along with a copy of the PDS logo as well. So writing an article, MLA has developed a simple template for the submission of all PDS-related articles for content review. Articles can be submitted in their final form if being published in a group newsletter. However, it's recommended that articles are submitted in the template provided and transferred to group newsletters following approval. This will provide a version of the article that can be circulated to communication channels outside your immediate network. Articles will be reviewed by the PDS coordinators and MLA subject matters experts before being signed off by MLA communications team. We ask that you allow 3 business days for this process. And one thing that we will also do with all articles, once you have published them in your intended location, is that they will be uploaded to the project website on the PDS search tool. So writing case studies. So the number of case studies is identified in your contract and will also form part of your communication plan. All case studies are required to be submitted for review by the PDS project manager, our coordinators and MLA communications team. Please submit these in their final form with all branding. If unknown or to be delivered through multiple publications, MLA has developed a simple case study template that can be used for submitting these for review. Again, we ask that you please allow 3 days for this. In some situations, other technical experts within MLA may be required to also review your case studies. An example of this would be genetic related topics. So all genetic related content is reviewed by the genetics team. So case studies are a really powerful tool to increase interest and engagement, which is why we request that they please be a key part of your communications plan. And they're also good to circulate through, through wider industry. So in addition to the case studies that you write for your program, for your project, we do have access to MLA Feedback Magazine, and case studies can be written for Feedback Magazine. Accessing the Feedback Magazine to deliver a case study is always an option. It won't be for every case study that you develop within your project, but we can definitely utilize it as a channel for pushing that information out. So MLA Comms will review case studies that you write. We will identify opportunities to then include those within Feedback Magazine. Ideally, it will generally be in years 2 to 6 when there is some really good results coming out of your projects. We'll then refer these through to the communications team and the content team for Feedback Magazine. The feedback articles are written by feedback writers and the producers involved in those case studies and also the facilitator would be involved in reviewing the content of those prior to publication. Photography and video. So the communication guides includes a great range of tips for taking photos and videos. So we do ask that you please collect some quality photographs that can be featured in reports and presentations and also in those case studies throughout the project. And photos will also be really useful to accompany media releases or social media or obviously other MLA publications as well as your own. The media. So if the group would like to inform local media about upcoming events, project progress and outcomes, there's just a few steps to take around this. So we ask that you please advise MLA of any media outreach planned through MLA's project manager, so through myself, and provide a copy of what materials are being distributed. My role is then to take that through to our media manager just to get their clearance on that. And then it's primarily around ensuring the appropriate acknowledgement to MLA and the PDS program in those communication distributions. So events and field days. So with regards to events, we do ask that you capture participant details, and where a pre-project survey has not been completed, we do ask that you capture people's consent for MLA to contact them for future review of the PDS program. Ideally, they will complete an observer or event evaluation survey, which will go into more detail throughout today's session. So face-to-face events, it's really key that they adhere to all state and federal health restrictions and requirements. While MLA don't have any additional imposed requirements anymore on face-to-face events, we do ask that you really keep that front of mind. And all communications to attendees should still contain a statement recommending that if people are sick or have tested positive to COVID, that they stay home until their symptoms have improved. And as mentioned, we do ask that all participant contact details be captured, such as name, phone number, email address, and consent to be contacted. Another key around field days and on-farm events is being mindful of biosecurity risks. So there are key biosecurity risks of field days and trials, such as introducing any unwanted pests and diseases in the field site, attendees taking a pest or disease back to their own property, or spreading throughout the district. So we've just included in here a link to the top 10 biosecurity tips for field days, so we can pass that round to everybody this morning as well. Webinars. So webinars are considered events. We do ask that you make MLA aware of any webinars that you're intending to hold, the date of the webinar, whether it's being recorded for future use, and the key topic and messaging to be delivered. Where webinars are recorded for future use and delivery, participants who are speaking must sign a consent and release form. There is one of those available in the communications guide. And with increasing exposure of events, so if you'd like to increase the exposure of your events through MLA's channels, there's a bit of a process to do that. So complete the MLA PDS event flyer template, which you can find on the Facilitator resources page, send that through to myself. I will then share that with our comms team for final sign-off. We'll get it uploaded to our events page, and it will go out in our weekly events section of the MLA weekly newsletter. We could also do social promotion through our social channels as well. So social media, a great way to generate awareness of your PDS and communicate progress, as well as advertise field days, etc. To increase engagement with social media platforms, we ask that you please tag MLA in all your posts. We don't expect social media posts to come through to MLA for approval every time, but we do ask that you please ensure that you are tagging MLA. So bringing it all together in the communications plan. So the communications plan sits within Appendix F of the communications guide. It is also on the facilitator's website as a standalone document as well. So complete the first draft of your communication plan using the template, send that through to myself and your PDS coordinator. The team will then review and provide feedback. And the final draft will then be submitted through to our communications team just for a final check over, as obviously they may be able to add value to that communications plan. This is just a snapshot of the template. So key is to ensure that the project code is included in the title and file name. The background, challenge and opportunity and project objectives refer straight to your statement of work. All that information you've already got there for you. Budget will be captured within your final application where you had your budget breakdown. And the key part is then just your channel and timing matrix. So refer to the communications section and sequence of activities section of your statement of work. That will give you a kickstart into developing that channel and timing matrix. So as mentioned, when I was going through the website, we've developed a number of templates to support PDS facilitators and ensure consistency in the format in which materials are being developed and published for PDS. So in that, we've got our event flyer, case study template, article template, a project summary template, fact sheet template, and also a PDS presentation slide deck as well. So fact sheets, project summaries, and produced case studies should be submitted to MLA on the templates provided. Articles can be submitted in their final form if being published in a group newsletter, etc. However, it is, as mentioned, recommended that everything be submitted through on the templates and then transferred to the group newsletter.
Thank you, Alana, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Can I just go to the next slide? So monitoring, evaluation, and reporting is a key component for the PDS program, and you'll see as we present through this section and the next section an overview of the MER requirements for PDS. So MER is important. It's an important element for MLA's strategic and operating plans, particularly under the Red Meat 2030 strategy. MLA has a statutory funding agreement with the Australian government, and they do a three-year performance review. Three-year performance review, and that's really to quantify what MLA has said it will do, and to identify and to demonstrate the benefits to levy payers, being the producers. So for the PDS MER to fit into these higher level MLA MER requirements, we have developed a PDS MER template and accompanying resources to assist with that. And it will really be looking to demonstrate knowledge, attitude, skills and aspiration, which is the CASA acronym, which we'll continue to refer to. And it will also look at measuring confidence changes as well. And then it moves on to identifying or demonstrating practice change and behavioural change, up to a higher level, looking at the impacts and the benefits to the broader industry, and as well as helping to identify what some of the barriers to adoption are for the different practices and how industry can work to address these. Next. So the monitoring and evaluation, framework for the PDS program is really based on the Bennett's hierarchy, which is an extension framework, and it has 6 levels. So there's inputs, outputs, the changes in the knowledge, attitude, skills and aspiration, or the CASA, the practice change, the impacts and the benefits to farmers and the groups, and then the broader benefits to industry and also the key learnings. So essentially the MER template that we provide is based on the Bennett's hierarchy framework. Next. So I'm just going to go through in regards to the MER and the different levels from the Bennett's hierarchy. So there's the inputs and the outputs. So this is essentially very simply, what did we do? So for the inputs, they might be things like project processes, and that could be plans, steering committee notes, the amount of money that's been invested, where it came from. So for example, you'd have MLA dollars, in-kind contribution from your producers and other stakeholders, number of participants, both the core and the observer producers. For your outputs, that's essentially the, I guess, tangible products that come from the PDS project. So they may be things like your trial or your demonstration data, the communication products, and the information documents that are produced, the number of field days held, etc. The next level next slide, is the CASA change. So that's, once again, the knowledge, attitude, skills and aspirations. And so this really looks at how well did we do what we said we were going to do. So this measures the change in the CASA, and we do that through surveys of participants. So we provide you with survey templates, which you fill out, and that looks at those who are directly involved, so the core participants, and those who are indirectly involved, or the observers. And the CASA monitoring and evaluation looks for the before and the after project or event assessment to assess what the changes are in the knowledge, attitude, skills and confidence. So we do that through pre-surveys. So that'll be one of your first milestone requirements, is to provide Alana and either Russell or I with your pre-project survey template. And then when you get to the end of your project, you then develop a post-survey, which will essentially aim to measure the changes in knowledge, attitude, skills and confidence as a result of participating in the producer demonstration site. The CASA and those surveys will form part of your monitoring and evaluation, milestone reports. Next slide. So the practice change is the next level. So the practices, it really looks at, has it changed what people do? So have they adopted different practices, or do they intend to adopt a different practice? And that's through the participation in the PDS, or from observing it. Have people changed what they're doing on farm? And what are those specific practice changes or technologies or innovations that they have implemented as a result of the project? And we're also interested to just do a little bit of scoping as to, if they haven't actually implemented that new practice change, what has been the barriers and what stopped you from, or stopped those producers from actually implementing those changes on farm. So this, once again, we just use those pre and those post surveys of the core participants, and for observer participants, that will be through a post-event survey. And part of that process will be looking at the intention or at the aspiration of people making those changes as well. So surveys will also be done after the project's completed. So for example, a couple of years after the PDS finishes up, this is not your responsibility, but MLA may go back and resurvey those producers who have participated to determine whether they've continued to adopt that new change and continue to implement that practice from the PDS. Next. Moving more broadly up or down the Bennett's hierarchy, we also look at, or the MER will also look at the participant benefits. So is anyone better off? Have people benefited from the project, and if so, by how much? What's the impact? And this can often be done through a very simple cost-benefit analysis. So what are the costs? What are the benefits from making these changes for the individual producers, particularly the core producers? The next level is the industry benefits. So this is the question where we ask through the MER, is the industry better off? Are there any key lessons or learnings that are relevant for other projects? And the questions that we ask in the MERB are, how might the broader industry benefit from this project and the findings? Who else might implement the practice change? For example, would others in the region be likely to adopt it? How has it been communicated? What have we learnt that we expected? And also with these projects, and I think an area that's really quite fascinating and it's great to include as well and to be thinking about when you're developing and implementing your MER is what are the things that we learnt that we didn't expect? And we really encourage you to capture those along the way because there's some true gems that come out of the projects where the group have learnt new things that they weren't expecting. And then the final one is, are there lessons for others and other projects? Next. So I guess it's just really important as we move forward and we develop the MER framework for your project. And once you've actually got your project up and going, the importance of going back and just continually checking in with your project objectives. So they define what it is that you plan to achieve in the life of your project. If you've got really good and very clear, SMART objectives, with SMART being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound objectives, that's going to really set your project up to deliver the best outcomes and to provide a roadmap of how to achieve that project. Throughout the development of your MER plan, your surveys, and also your communication report, we will continue to say keep checking back on your objectives. So just a recap and a reminder. Next. So in your the MER framework, which I'll show you a template shortly, you will need to identify what metrics you will capture to demonstrate the success of meeting your objectives and meeting what you've said you would do in the MER. So some of these will need to be determined and measured before your project commences. So that's baseline data, for example. And at the end, we then remeasure that to assess the change. So some examples of metrics can simply be the number of core producers involved in demonstration sites, that's a mandatory one, the number of observer producers involved, the number of livestock under management, the number of, the area under management, any steering committee decisions or notes, the costs of the inputs for the project, labour, and any other inputs. Results from demonstration sites, so there may be things like reproductive rate, weaning rate, pasture cuts, etc. And then benefits from outcomes. So for example, the dollar value of increased weight gain as an example. Next. For the CASA, that will be the metrics will include the knowledge, the skills, the confidence of core producers, and you do that through the post and project surveys. For observer producers, there will be event participation evaluation. For producer practice, that will be through the pre and project surveys. There'll be a metric could be the number of field days held, the media coverage that the project has received, the number of events, any outputs that you've developed, case studies, producer guides, fact sheets, webinars, YouTube clips, etc. So they will all become metrics of how you capture the demonstration of success of your project. Next. Another really key component that we would recommend that you do is in your full application process and then moving on to your statement of work and your contracting, there's a table within that, which is the productivity and profitability metrics. So within that table, your project will have ticked at least one of the areas, one of the practice change areas. So that may be, for example, sheep reproductive efficiency, and then you may have ticked U condition score management or U nutrition, and then you've got a productivity KPI and then an economic impact or KPI. So whichever boxes have been ticked in your statement of work will be the KPIs that your final report will be expected to address. So as you move forward and as you develop your MER, it's absolutely crucial that you're going back to your statement of work and you're identifying and determining what your objectives are, and also what are the profitability and productivity metrics that you've said that your project will meet. Next. So the next part in the MER columns will be how will you measure them? So you'll identify what measurement systems or approaches you will employ to capture the information. So for example, they may be records of your inputs, the steering committee notes regarding your decisions, your communication and extension material produced, for example, your case studies, your number of media releases, fact sheets, producer guides, etc. There'll also be the surveys through the pre and the post-project surveys for your core participants, and for your observer participants, there will be an event or an engagement template that you can utilise. There'll be data collection at your demonstration sites, and then very simple cost-benefit analysis. And I think that simple is really important, that you'll hear Russell, Alana and I say time and time again. With the PDS projects and with all of these, we encourage you to keep it simple at each step of the way. Next slide. So here's the template, which I've been referring to. So this will be part of your first milestone reporting. You will, as well as your communications plan, which Alana's just gone through, you will also develop a monitoring and evaluation template. So you will receive this template. It will be on the facilitator resources in the website where Alana pointed you to earlier. So for example, with the Bennett's hierarchy level and the structure that we've just gone through, the first one is inputs. So what did we do? And here's where you'll have in the project performance column, you'll fill this in with what your performance measures are. And then the final column is your evaluation methods. Likewise for outputs, this is the question of what did we do? So this is where you describe the outputs planned or expected from your project, including any engagement activities and products that are produced from the demonstration site. Next. As we move down, we then look at the changes in the CASA, or the knowledge, attitude, skills. So this is where we describe what changes are in those areas. Then we move down to practice change. So has it actually changed what people will do? Then we move to the benefits. Is anyone better off? And then finally, there's the general observations, outcomes, and industry benefit. So in the template, you'll move forward and you'll fill these out, which next slide. So here's an example. So for example, inputs with this particular example, the performance measure or the metrics are, in this case, 30 core producers are operating beef and sheep enterprises. We've got 3 demonstration sites. We're aiming for 154 observers. There's going to be 60 hectares of project treatment and 60 hectares of project control. Our total area of the farms and the observers will be captured, and our total funds will be 136,000. So you can see there, you're just essentially listing what the measures are for each element for your inputs, and then you'll also do that for the outputs. So for example, for the outputs, there's the data. You'll add in in this instance, what the production efficiency is, what the pasture productivity is, stocking rates, reproductive efficiency, etc. And then outputs are those products that are developed as a result of the project. And so some examples are, we'll hold 3 field days open to all producers. We'll have 1 webinar, 2 workshops by year 3. We'll have a number of case studies for each site. So as you go forward and develop the MER template as well, continue to refer back to your full application and also your statement of work. because the majority of this will already be done for you through that process. So it'll be a matter of you looking at your statement of work and then pulling out what are the key components and then just adding them into your MER template. So the evaluation method is basically, okay, well, how are we going to demonstrate that we have met that metric? So for example, we've got for the inputs, we have 3 demonstration sites are established and the data submitted. The core 30 core producers have completed their CASA survey. The observer producers have completed their post-event survey. We have, through the survey process, we've captured the total area and we've also captured the total number of animals, for example. We've also providing the steering committee notes, etc. So you can see there how there's the methods of how we capture the data. For the outputs, for example, it's captured as part of the methodology. And when you're reporting on your field days, we'll be asking what date was a field day, where was it held, what were the number of producers who attended, how many observers, how many core producers, any demographics from those, how many hectares do they run, how many, what's their stocking rate, etc. So that's the inputs and the outputs example. And then if we move on to the next slide, we then move down as a template, as we suggested before. So with your CASA, for example, we've got a performance measure will be 80% of core producers and 50% of observer producers will have increased their knowledge or their understanding of the benefit of using pasture management tools, etc. So as I said earlier, go back to your statement of work and your full application process. For most of the instances, that CASA performance measure or that metric will actually be one of the objectives potentially of your project. So you just grab that and pop that in there. And then the second one there is the number of producers directly or indirectly engaged in the project. Evaluation methods will be captured by the CASA, so that'll be the pre and post project surveys for the core producers and the event surveys for the observer producers. As we move down to the practice change, once again, it's likely that that may be one of your objectives of your project, where you've actually identified the number of core or observer producers who will or intend to adopt a particular practice. And then likewise, your methods will largely be your project and your event survey evaluation, and then any other specifics that you've identified. Next slide. So the next level in the MER template will be the benefits. So in this particular examples, as a result of the increased pasture production, sites will demonstrate an increased carrying capacity by 25%, increased animal production per hectare by 25%, and a cost-benefit analysis will assess the return on investment. So you can see there, it's just a matter of listing what the performance measures or the metrics will be. And then in the final column, it's what the evaluation methods will be. So in this particular instance, it will be meeting specified targets in project and evaluating their influence via your CASA or your surveys. And then the next one is determined as part of the PDS methodology and enterprise evaluation. For your general outcomes and observations, there will be your post or your exit surveys of core producers, which will enable assessment of changes and any additional learnings, which I mentioned earlier, which will be key. So really try to ensure that you capture those additional or those unexpected project learnings and any barriers or enablers to adoption. And then you capture these, the method through the changes in perceptions, enthusiasms, the skills, the aspirations, and then report the relevant findings. And I would suggest too, as you're going through and completing your milestone reports, some of these feel like, oh, we're not at this stage yet. At the top, you've obviously will have your inputs and your outputs, which are very tangible. But as you move down, it gets more and more difficult to, I guess, demonstrate that you're meeting these performance measures. But that general observations and outcomes, try to capture those as you go. So they may be discussions at the meeting, you know, some of those unintended learnings. Try and capture those as the project progresses, because when you get to the end of, for example, a 5-year project, you're going to forget what some of those key learnings are. So that's just a little tip in regards to, as the project progresses, ensuring that you're updating your MER and you're capturing that information. So with the MER, and I've spoken about this, a key component particularly of capturing that CASA level and beyond is really around the surveys. So next slide. The surveys are a key element of the MER, as I've said. We do this through a number of ways. We do the pre and the post project surveys, particularly for the core producers. The core and the observers previously, so if any of you have been involved in the PDS program in an earlier project, the core and the observers were required to do essentially the same level of reporting and the same level of surveys, but we've just been through a process of altering that so that the observer producers will now will capture more event feedback and their contribution as a result of attending an event, rather than providing the full detail that the core producers do. With the surveys, we'll provide examples. Once again, that mantra that will continue throughout the PDS development is just to keep it simple. So if you're getting really bogged down in your surveys, just go back to us saying keep it simple, or reach out to us. The surveys will also be part of your milestone 1 report as well. Next. So the surveys are structured in a series of sections. Section A will be your demographic information. Section B will be capturing that knowledge and the skills. And Section C will be very much about confidence and your practices, and also the intention to adopt. Next slide. So Section A, this is essentially what your template that you'll receive from us will look like. So that will be the contact details of the producer, and then also some information about the enterprise. So for example, area managed, number of breeders, beef breeders, number of lambs, etc. So that's capturing the demographics. Next. And Section B will be your knowledge and your skills. So I'm going to say it again, but we remind you to refer back to the objectives in your statement of work, and where possible, link the questions to the project objectives. So in the template that we provide you, we will have a series of example questions for you to look at, and so then you obviously adjust these to the relevant topic that your PDS is covering. So B1, B2 and B3 are more, I guess, a quiz or a knowledge question. And then B4 is a new approach that we're trying through 2022 and beyond. And that is to get the producer to rate their current knowledge in relation to the particular area. So, for example, you may say, how would you rate your current knowledge in relation to subsoil limiting pasture growth? And then the producers just determine what they believe their current level of knowledge is. Next. So for confidence and practices, which will be your Section C, once again, these need to align to the practice changes that you've identified in your objectives, and also that key metrics table that we looked back at when I was going through the MER section, where you've ticked a particular metric that your PDS is going to address. You need to make sure that you're capturing that data at the start for your baseline data to ensure that you're able to report on what your project says it's going to do. So for the confidence questions, as we did with the knowledge one, we suggest that you include this question of how confident are you in the particular topic, where we have the producers rate themselves in regards to their level of confidence, whether they are considering making any specific changes within the business within that particular topic area, how likely are they like to change, and then we're aim to capture what the current practices are and their frequency of what they do. So there's normal, sometimes, rarely, never, not applicable. So this really captures their confidence at this point in time for you as facilitators to know what the confidence level is, but also what current practices, what's their intention to make a practice change within this area, but also what are the current practices that those producers are currently using. So just make sure as you move forward and you develop your template that you're actually capturing really relevant information and information that will actually mean something for the project. So we want to try and keep the surveys as succinct and as short as possible to ensure that we don't give the producers survey fatigue, but you do need to use this process to capture the information that you need as well. So just keep referring back to your statement of work, making sure that you're capturing that information now. Doing a good job of the MER and your comms plan and the survey at the start will make your whole process of the PDS facilitation so much easier. So the final part of this is your C4, which is where you collect the metrics that you're seeking to demonstrate in the PDS. So for those of you who are doing a very simple cost-benefit analysis, for example, this is where you would get the producers to put in what their current metric, what the metric is and what their current performance is. Through this process as well, you will also determine which producers you need to help and to identify some skill building in regards to determining how they are going to capture and understand what their current performance level is as well. Next slide. For core participants as well, this is a really key component of the PDS project, and this is where the core participants give consent to MLA contacting them further. So in a year's time or beyond, where MLA may want to go back and assess the impact of the program beyond the project time scope. So this allows MLA that consent to go back and contact them. The second one is that MLA may send me newsletters and inform me of future events. So that's also a yes or a no. And also that producers have read and understood and they accept the terms of MLA's producer demonstration site, participant consent and release. So this one's really crucial too for all of your core producers, that you determine whether they have ticked that yes or no box, because that will be essentially allow you to utilise any images or footage of those producers moving forward with your communications and your other outputs that you develop. So that's a fundamental part of the producer consent. So you'll need to have the producer's name and also that they sign the survey. As part of your second milestone requirements, we will ask that you scan just the consent page of your surveys and send them back so that MLA has them on records as well. Next slide. So as I said earlier, we also will survey the observer producers. So we have implemented a change in how we do this from previous years. We're moving away from that traditional pre-project CASA survey for the core producers, for the observer producers, particularly if they only sort of come to one event. It's not actually giving a whole lot of detail if they don't come back again. So the new process will really be about the post-event engagement and the evaluation to collect observers' key details, but also to determine their increase in knowledge and skill and adoption as part of attending a particular webinar or a field day or any other event that your project runs. Next. So the observer survey template will be provided to you as well. There's some minimum information that MLA would like to capture in regards to, I guess, the demographic details, particularly really very much aligns to the core observer, the core producer surveys. And then the section 2 and section 3 are really about how those particular producers valued or rated attending the event. Is there new information that they've received? What's the information? Are they likely to move forward and make any practice changes or implement anything different on farm as a result of attending that particular event or webinar or forum or whatever the contribution or has been? Next. So the post-project surveys are as you move, as your project progresses and you get to the end of your project, we will provide templates for your core surveys. Again, They're a customised template and you'll need to provide those 3 to 6 months before your final report is due. So essentially the post-project survey you'll provide to Alana, Russell and I to get feedback. They will link and be very similar to your pre-survey to ensure that you're capturing the changes in the knowledge, attitude, skills and any practice change. The post-project survey will target also as many observers as possible. And the post-project survey data will be particularly around those metrics and those key performance indicators that you've determined in that statement of work table. This is where you'll capture that data, which will then be utilised by you to analyse any of the changes for your inclusion in the draft final report. So you can see why it's important that you get those surveys out 3 to 6 months before the final report is due, because the post-project survey will basically inform the final report of the changes made.
Thanks, Alana, and good morning or afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. And as Alana and Maria had said, thank you for joining us today. Thanks, Alana. I'm just going to run through quickly the milestone and final reporting and final reports. The milestone reports or progress reports are due every 6 months. There's a template that we've developed that makes it very easy to use. As I mentioned in the question about benefit cost analysis, we're very conscious about time and we want to make it as easy as possible. So really for progress reports every 6 months or an annual report every 12 months, we're expecting 2 or 3 pages of written response. Nothing more, just so that it's concise and clear as how the project is going. So for the progress or annual reports, you just copy the milestone criteria that's in your contract or your statement of work, and you report against each point. So it's a very simple process just to be able to do that. We'd then like you to summarise any key outputs from the demonstration sites that you've got. Provide a progress report against the monitoring and evaluation plan, and I'll show you that as a later example. Again, very simple to do. Your first report, first milestone report or progress report, must include the baseline survey data for core producers. That would be within sort of 6 months of the project starting. Provide a progress against your communication plan. So have you run the field days that you intended to? Have you put out the press release as you were expecting, etc.? So just reporting against your communication plan. Just provide details of any steering committee meetings that you might have, details of any extension events such as field days or webinars that you've conducted. What are you planning to do in the next 6 months? And as a result of the program or the project progressing, have there been any changes to the method or the budget that you need to bring to our attention? Sometimes, but not regularly, these might require a modification to the statement of work, but just let us know if there are any changes to method or if you are intending to change the budget position in any way. And then the final part is just a 100-word thereabouts summary of your project, and that's for publication to the broader industry. And we do that, as Alana mentioned at the start, through things like sending it out to the regional advisory committee, so CELRAC, NABRAC and WALRAC, so that they're very aware of all the PDSs that are going on around the country. It doesn't have to be exactly 100 words, far from it, but in that sort of rough 8 or 10 line summary. And please keep in mind when you're writing that summary, the RACs will be getting potentially 20 or 30 different summaries. So just say who's running the program and whereabouts in the country it is actually operating, so they've got some context around the program. Next, please, Lana. Here's the simple template for milestone reports, so either annual or progress reports. The first, you just fill out the the group name, the project code. Please put the project code in the title of all your documents. It just makes it so much easier for Alana, Maria, and myself. What's the milestone number, your name, and your contact details. The first question is, is it your project on track to achieve its objectives? Yes, no. It can be as simple as just saying yes and moving on. If no, can you please let us know, whether or not we need to adjust anything to take account of that. How many core producers are currently engaged? How many observer producers do you think will be involved? How many unique demonstration sites are involved? And then the next line is the location of those sites in years 1, 2, and 3. Sometimes they'll be in the same site, sometimes they'll vary. Then the next component is achievement criteria for this milestone as per your contract. So you just purely copy them straight from your contract for milestone 3, let's say. What are the criteria that you said that you will achieve? And then just report dot point wise is fine against each of these criteria for the period that you're referring to. So again, it's a very simple process just to give us and yourself an opportunity to see the progress of the project. Thanks, Alana. Then you just summarise any key outputs and findings from your project. So demonstration site results, communication extension activities, the outcomes of surveys, whether there's been any adoption or impact as yet in the program. So just again, a summary of the key outputs from your project to date. The next section is saying, well, what is going to happen in the next 6 months? What are your plans? And again, that can be very simply done. We're going to continue on with the demonstration sites, or we'll be putting the RAMs in, or whatever the case may be for your project. Just what sort of activities we'll be doing. Include also things like webinars and field days, if you're going to be doing those in the next 6 months. The next is to advise if there's any changes to the method or sequence of activities, or indeed the budget. And if there's not, just say no. If there is, just outline what they might be. Is your monitoring and evaluation reporting plan being appropriately implemented? And again, I've mentioned we've got a template available to just allow you to report against your MLA plan that makes it a very simple process. And then the final is the 100-word summary. Include any hyperlinks to any articles, but just a summary of how your PDS is progressing towards its objectives. And as I mentioned before, please include who's managing the project and where it's operating, just so that the readers have some context about your project. Thanks, Alana. So here's a copy of the milestone of the MLA plan that Maria spoke to you about. The first 3 columns, what you will have filled out in the first 6 months of your project when you're filling out your MLA plan. All we're asking you to do is to include another column on the right-hand side and just update as it is, against the particular performance components of your project. So you just relate and report each of the key activities that you said you were going to do, and saying, yes, we've done the survey, yes, we've had a committee meeting, yes, the budget is on track, we've got so many demonstration sites that'll be going. So just a quick update of how you're reporting against your MLA plan. Thanks, Alana. The final report, again, there's a standard final report template that will outline. The key point I want to make again, and I know we've been hammering it a bit about keeping things simple, but please don't think that your final report needs to be enormous. A thing of 20 to 25 pages will be plenty. That includes all of your results and findings as well. The key components of the final report template is it's a very standard, pretty much similar to a research report. So just an overview of the abstract for for your project, the executive summary, the PDS key data summary table, which I'll refer to in a minute, which allows you to bring all of the metrics, if you like, for your project into one single table to make it easy. A bit of background about what's the purpose of the producer demonstration site, including, you know, what are the on-farm issues that are being addressed and why, who is the target audience, and what will the results from the demonstration be used for. Then just outline the objectives, which again, as Maria has stated a couple of times, are just straight from your statement of work, and thus the reason why it's important to have your objectives very clear from the get-go. Thanks, Alana. Then what is the demonstration site design? So talk a bit about the methodology, talk about any economic analysis that you might do to help you calculate the cost benefit analysis, noting Rhonda's comments before. Then what extension and communication have been undertaken, what monitoring and evaluation processes have been used for data collection, and what has been measured. Thanks, Alana. Then what are the results, of course, just outlining the primary results or key findings of the project, particularly those coming from the demonstration sites, etc. Then a section on discussion and conclusion. You know, what are the key insights and implications for the project, with a particular focus on how this is going to relate to other parts of the red meat industry, and any learnings or knowledge gaps or extra resources that were identified throughout the project. And then finally, thanks, Alana. Finally, just the key findings of the project, and again, dot points is very acceptable for this. And then just a clear sort of concise recommendations for where the benefits might accrue to the industry more broadly. And are there any future research recommendations that have come through? So has the project thrown up other areas that need to be examined in more detail in the future? So that's largely the final report template. Again, just emphasising, if you could please keep it as simple as possible. In the first couple of pages of the template, there's a key data summary table. So this really is just, again, an opportunity to, in a simple way, capture the real meat, if you like, of the particular project. So what's the project aim? And then what were you actually trying to achieve, whether it be in production efficiency benefits or reduction in expenditure in labour, or an increase in income, or it might be you know, what are the additional costs to achieve the particular benefits. So that's almost as simple as it can be for, you know, the benefit cost analysis that we've mentioned a couple of times, just keeping it very simple. So it is more like a gross margin comparison. Then just, you know, the number of core participants, number of observer participants, how many hectares did those two groups have under management? How many sheep or cattle have they got under management? This just allows us to accumulate that data for the program as a whole, for the reporting that Alana in particular needs to do back into her organisation. And then, you know, what are the changes in knowledge and skills of the core producers, the same for the observer producers, and what percentage of core producers and observer producers have actually implemented practice change. And then the total area managed that the benefit might apply to, again, simply from the data above. So I beg your pardon. Then the very final part of it is the key impact data. So you just delete whichever is not applicable. So we've got, you know, net benefit per hectare that was impacted, or net benefit per hectare for the total area that could be managed, or what's the gross margin per hectare, or gross margin per DSE, or what's been the impact on the cost of production. So just whichever one of those is applicable, you just delete the others and you put it in so that we've got a very clear impact data arising from the program.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly run through the survey data collection and collation process. So as I mentioned earlier, we are looking to introduce a slightly different way. Anyone who has had projects in the past will know that the surveys were collected through hard copy forms and then transferred into an Excel spreadsheet by the project team, so by the facilitator and their team. We're looking to move away from that, and we're looking to move to collating the survey data through customer voice, which is like SurveyMonkey, eForm, that type of process. So I'll just go through that, and if there are any questions, we can then touch on those. So effectively what will happen is you will still go through and develop the Word version of your survey templates. Once Maria and Russell and I have reviewed those and we've all agreed that they're at a final version, I will then transfer those into an eForm version for you. So I will do that through our customer voice system. We'll provide you with a link and QR code that you can then use to either collect the data, so you can provide that link or that QR code direct to your core producers or your event participants to collect the data, or you can use the Word version of the form to collect that data. When collating that data, if you have used the Word version, rather than using a spreadsheet to enter that data into, you would use that eForm link to enter the data into. MLA will then provide you with a copy of the collated data for your analysis and reporting. And then the facilitator will obviously analyse that data and capture the results within the milestone and MER reporting. So effectively, rather than having facilitators using all different systems, we're just wanting to centralise that process. So in the past, we've had many producers who have used eForm or SurveyMonkey or some other form of electronic collection and collation of that data. However, we've just been advised through privacy requirements and other issues around that we should really be sort of centralising that process. So for yourselves, the process is, as I mentioned, you will create the Word version. Once that's approved, I will then transfer that into an eForm for you. You can either use that eForm link to have your participants enter that data directly into that eForm version, or use the Word version and take those Word versions, those hard copy forms, and transfer that data into the eForm. So it's effectively the process. You'll then get a link which will give you access to where that data is stored so that you can review and analyse your pre and post survey data as required. So this is just an example of what the eForm will effectively look at like. So it will have all the privacy requirements and consent information, etc., captured within it. Sorry. And then go through and incorporate your demographics, your knowledge and skills section, and your practices and confidence section. So it's relatively simple. So the intention is that we would do that with our pre-project survey for our core producers. We would set that up for our event / observer engagement survey. And then again, at the end of the project, we'd set that up for our post for core and post for observer. So one thing I will say around the surveys, if you have a established observer group for your project and you want to do a normal pre-project survey with that particular group, you are welcome to do it. The reason we've moved to this post-engagement, post-event type initial collection of data for the observers is to try and increase the number of observer contacts that we're actually getting, so we then have a bigger pool come the end of the project to try and capture that data around, well, has there been practice change implemented throughout the term of that project as a result of their participation, or also increase that pool of people that MLA can contact post completion of your project to do those sort of impact reviews that we do on the program around, well, you attended an event or you participated in a program. We want to see what impact that has had on your business. So it's really around trying to increase the amount of people's details that we're capturing without having overcomplicated surveying processes if possible. Okay, so we've just got a bit of key information and wrap up. So we will have any other questions right at the end. I've just got a couple of slides to touch on. Okay, so some key timings. So milestone 1, as Maria and Russell have both mentioned, your comms, MER and pre-project survey templates are due. So this is generally within about 6 weeks of contract execution. The comms plan and the MER plan will be reviewed and approved by MLA. And then the project survey for your core and your observer event engagement survey will need to be developed and approved also. That will all form milestone 1. Milestone 2 is your first progress report. So that's generally 6 months post contract execution. The expectation within that report is that your core producer pre-project surveys will be completed, the data analysed and reported. Observer surveys, any that you may have captured to date within that 6-month period, should be reported as well. And the consent is submitted. So if you choose to use the hard copy form for collection of that data, we do ask that you provide us with a copy of that front page. If the producers are utilising the link and entering that data directly themselves into the survey system, we don't need a physical copy of that, because by ticking that box themselves, they're providing that consent. So it's only if you're collecting the data through the paper form and then you're transferring it into the e-form for collation that we need a copy of that consent front page. Milestone 3 is your first annual report. So I suppose our expectation around that is that you would have held an event or two within that period. So there should be some observer and event evaluation data to report. And also that your first year of data or results should have been finalised and captured within that report. And then obviously the process is ongoing from there. A few other bits of key important information. So it has been mentioned a couple of times, but the MLA project code needs to be included in all file names and correspondence. So if you can have it within your file name as well as within the subject of any emails that you send through, just with the volume of projects currently under management within this portfolio, it just helps us from an admin perspective quite a lot, having that project code very clear in all communication. All milestone reports and MER updates should be submitted in Microsoft Word format, please. This again helps just with reviewing, providing feedback and comments on those documents. The milestone reports are delivered and finalised by the due date as per the executed contract. So to achieve this, it's really important that reports are submitted and materials are submitted to the team with sufficient time to review and address any feedback before that due date in the contract. So ideally, if you can submit them a week to 2 weeks in advance, that gives us plenty of time to review, provide you with feedback and you time to address that feedback before that due date within the contract. Milestone reports need to include a summary of the demonstration site results and data within the report. As Russell mentioned, there's a section there to capture that information. As Russell also mentioned, the 100-word summaries, they don't have to stick to 100 words exactly, but 100 plus is good, but ideally not 500, are published in the MLA PDS updates and also as a progress update on your project's site within the PDS search tool. So it is really, really important that they are providing some key information that will hopefully get more producers hooked on your project and wanting to follow along on its progress. And as also mentioned, the new facilitated resource page is the host of all current versions of the MLA templates, including your progress and annual report and final report templates, and all those communication templates I mentioned earlier.